the reason we're doing this Q&A is because I'm wanting to create this content for women business owners who are just starting out. They're in the concept phase, or they're in the first 2 years of creating and building their businesses. And one of the mistakes that I made from early on was not investing in protecting my intellectual property from as early as I could. And so, I want to take this great opportunity and just let our viewers know that I've actually known Melissa since elementary school. We've reconnected as adults, and now Melissa is my wonderful IP attorney and an incredible source, and so professional and knowledgeable. And really, I trust you with all my IP.
Thanks,
So let me ask you this, first of all, how do you define intellectual property for someone rolling out their business? What would constitute that?
So intellectual property constitutes trademarks, which are brand names, copyrights, which are for artwork, screenplays, photographs, then something called trade secrets, and then also patents. So trade secrets are information like customer lists, vendor lists, business methodologies that you keep secret by having a contract with other people to agree that they have to keep what you tell them secret. And then patents are for inventions, and they have to meet a threshold in the law that's called novelty. So it's really for new inventions.
Okay, that's so good to know. And I know that you do not personally deal in patents, right?
Right. So I have my MA and BA in English from Stanford University, and it's required that you have a math or science degree to handle patents. So I handle trademarks and copyrights, and some people refer to that as soft intellectual property.
Okay. All right. That's great to know. And in as much as I encourage new business owners to think of working with an attorney, either for intellectual property or business, or an accountant. These are investment expenses, meaning they protect your business. They help set you up in a healthy way so that you can grow. Of course, some people don't come into their new business with a surplus of cash to spend on this. So what are some ways that you would advise new business owners to help this process if they don't have money, really?
Yeah. So, there are a couple of things that you can do. First of all, copyrights are not as complex as trademarks. So copyrights to protect, let's say you have a line of apparel and you have someone take photographs of it and you want to protect those photos. Those photos are subject to copyright protection, and you can register your own copyrights at www.copyright.gov. And that is something that's pretty cost effective, like I said, and not very complicated. The government charges $65 since January 1st, used to be $40, $65 per copyright application. And if your works are unpublished, which means you didn't distribute them in copy form to the public, then you can put up to 10 unpublished works on a single application for only $80. So that's something that's really cost effective and that I tell my clients that they can do on their own. In contrast, trademarks, brand names are a little more complex. And if you are found liable for trademark infringement, very few people realize that one of the things that someone who sues you can win is all of your profits. So yes, huge. It is huge. You can all that blood, sweat, and tears you put into your business, someone can take all that money from you. And so trademarks are where I advise people to spend their money. If they're on a budget and they can handle a lot of copyright, you can protect copy on your website, you can protect photos you take and you put on Instagram, all those kinds of things you can protect on your own, but trademarks is when you should really get the advice of an attorney.
Okay, that's really good to know. And then have you seen mistakes made in the past where, you could give some advice and say, here's some things I've seen where people have run into trouble? Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of things with regard to copyright. Sometimes people can just be too trusting, I think, and they can post materials maybe on a website, and people don't realize how brazenly people will steal your materials. I have a friend who's also a client she used to be the head designer for Calvin Klein in New York. And she has since become a fashion illustrator, and she just kind of sells her own illustrations with through galleries. And she had a woman go onto Instagram and basically take all of her photos of her art and just change them very slightly and say they were her own. And then she posted them on an art website. And I managed to get all of these things down, but my client hadn't thought of registering the copyright to her drawings, her illustrations. And if she had, we had to go back after the fact and do it and speed it up and pay extra fees. But if she'd done it from the outset on her own, she would have been in better shape.
And that is exactly what I am talking about when I try to convey this information to new business owners, which is, don't make the mistake I made, which was to start this late in the game and try to create time and some capital up front to help protect as you're growing. And then let me ask you this. Do you ever, does someone ever hire you to sort of do an intellectual property audit where you kind of go through all their stuff and say, is any of this protected? Is this content protected? Are these items protected? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, people do. And I'm glad you used the right terminology. It really is called an audit. That sometimes confuses people because they think of the IRS and their taxes. But yeah, so I offer usually my first hour at a discounted rate. And I tell people a lot of the time we can use it for that, or just to answer a ton of legal questions that they have, and we can Zoom for an hour. But I can take a look, you'd be surprised how many times people think that they registered something and they didn't. And that may be because they filed an application and then there was a letter that they received that either got lost or they didn't understand it. So they put it on their desk and then they lost it. So it's important to know, when you think it's registered, is it really registered? And then what is valuable to you that's valuable enough to be registered,
Right. Because some things may not, you have to sort of disseminate what content is really something you need to protect versus something that's more general that, people can borrow concepts from it, but it is more common knowledge, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a good example, I was speaking with a client tonight who has educational services, and she kind of is a business coach, but she also teaches classes in coaching people for business. And one of the things that came up was, wow, I have, 20 years of materials that I've created. How do I know what I should protect? And what I would say is what you want to protect is what you know over the years that you use the most, that you rely on the most, or that you've seen other people borrow from, whether online or elsewhere.
And once you've protected it, let's say, what is the purpose of having it protected? Like, what can it do for you if, in fact, it appears that somebody has taken your stuff, kind of stolen it from you?
Well, as far as Lisa, as far as copyrights, your copyright will give you, so we're talking about, could be educational materials you've written, or screenplay, or a novel, or photographs. As far as that goes, when you register your copyright, it actually gives you, in a timely manner, if you register within 3 months of the date of publication, the right to sue that person and make them pay for your attorney's fees if you win, which is a huge tool. And then it also gives you the right, if you register in a timely manner, to get what are called statutory damages, which are triple the amount of regular damages. So it's a great thing. That's why I love this idea. I sometimes teach my clients how to register a copyright. And I say, if you teach a person to fish, they can fish for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And then they have, all of these valuable copyrights that they registered in a timely manner. And the greatest thing is too, if you have to write a cease and desist letter because someone is taking your materials or your artwork, then if they can see that you registered in a timely manner, that threat against them will be a lot more impactful than it would be otherwise.
Right. And you can't, it's not retroactive though, right? The copyright stands from the date that it's issued.
It's the date of application.
Date of application. Okay. So technically, if somebody did use your material like 6 months before you actually filed, that you have to consider that a wash. You can't do anything about that, right?
Well, you could, because there's something called a common law copyright claim, and common law in the law means it's according to statutes, and it means if you have and case law, if you have unregistered trademarks or unregistered copyrights, you can still bring a common law claim of infringement for copyrights or trademarks. But the problem is that your rights are a lot fewer than if you did have a registration. So it makes it harder to bring those claims in court.
Right. And here's kind of maybe a silly question, I don't know, but is there sort of a how-to guide if you want to try to attempt to do these yourself, like the copywriting for dummies, you know, how you can go online and do that?
Okay, so believe it or not, like I said, I don't think it's not recommended to do this for trademarks because it really is complicated.
Right.
And that's because trademark infringement involves something called the analysis of the likelihood of confusion, which is somewhat complex. But with copyrights, the Copyright Office puts out, which is the Library of Congress, they put out these periodicals, and they call them pamphlets basically, but they have pamphlets on every topic. So if you just go to copyright.gov and you kind of start digging into the website, you'll find a lot of explanatory pamphlets.
Okay. All right. That's really good. That's really good information. And then just one thing I want to touch on, for patents, there's a design and then there's utility, right? They're two different ones.
There are, it's not my area of expertise, but I can tell you the basic things that I know about patents. So there are design patents, utility patents, and believe it or not, there are even patents for like you can obtain for well, just very obscure things. We'll stick to those two.
Okay.
The design patents would be something like the form of a Croc shoe, you know, the way it looks is subject to a design patent. And a utility patent would be something that's more complex, usually where it has to do with, you know, like a chemical process of manufacturing something, or, you know, other kinds of more complex issues. And patents themselves, the reason a lot of times they're prohibitive is they're just very expensive compared to trademarks and copyrights.
Yeah. And now, you know, I know the famous story of Sarah Blakely, who, you know, the creator of Spanx, and she talked about writing her own patent application and submitted it, you know, whatever it was, $1,500 or $1,200 or something. And, you know, it got through, but I think that might be like, you know, a once in a lifetime situation.
Well, believe it or not, before I became an attorney, I was living in Brooklyn for a while, and I wrote a patent for a product that the company I worked for, that I started with my ex-fiance from Stanford, had created. And I did read a book called How to Patent It Yourself. I checked it out at the public library. It worked for me also.
Oh my God. Okay.
I did. It was for something called the magnetic backed time indicating device. And these are basically clocks that stick to your refrigerator, where all the different 12-hour markers are magnets.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so cool. I just learned something really new about you. I love that. Okay, well, that's, you know, that's such good information, and so much in, you know, the context of this Q&A. I think that's really helpful. And so I would encourage people starting out to really just do their own audit and put their stuff together and meet with an attorney and just have them go over that stuff and say, you know, and maybe you don't do everything all at once. Maybe you sort of piece it out.
Yeah. I think that's a good approach. I mean, what I try to do is I prioritize for people, and I tell them, here's my pricing for everything. And then I will number it and say, well, here's what I think you should do first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Another tip that I would give you may seem like something counterintuitive and that everyone knows, but I will tell you this anyhow, because I find that the need to tell people this a lot when I get them on the phone, which is when you call an attorney for help, really, they're trying to help you. So listen. That's like one of the number one things. Really just listen to what they're telling you. Because what happens sometimes, I get very enthusiastic people who think they know like everything. I've read all this stuff. And then I understand that. And I'm glad they have energy, but I also want to help them. And if they're telling me something that I know is factually or legally incorrect, I want to actually be able to deliver my help to them. So if you listen, really make it easy for someone to help you.
Okay. You know what? Boy, we could all probably be reminded of that a little more often. And, as always, I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I know how busy you are. I mean, we had to, it's almost my bedtime and we corralled this together. And, but also I would love to, if you would take a second, and do you have a copy of your book nearby?
I have my filtered background on, so it's kind of hard to show. Let me see if I can. Oh, there.
Yes, there.
Little shares a secret.
Put it a little more under you.
Yeah.
Oh,
there we go.
Mr. McCoodle.
Yeah, Mr. McCoodle shares a secret.
Love it.
It is the story of a guy who goes to a fair, and he essentially is finding that all his friends are having a ton of fun, but he feels worried, like, oh my God, they're so high up in the air on the roller coaster. And he's so worried that he feels paralyzed and he can't move and he can't have fun like everyone else. And then he realizes by talking to a friend of his named Flora, who happens to be a fish, that he's scared, and he shares it with her and they talk about it. And then he ends up saying, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to get on that roller coaster with you. And he does, and they have a really good time. So the message is really to try to just foster conversations between parents and kids about all of their feelings, whether they're positive feelings or negative feelings.
I'm going to tie that into the conversation we're having, which is, learning how to run your business, learning how to be responsible about it, taking on all of these very kind of professional, legal, adult tasks of, can be overwhelming and can make you feel anxious and nervous. But I think that you can express that too. You can say that to a lawyer. I'm really nervous about all of this. And I really, so we can all learn from Mr. McCoodle.
I think so. I mean, look, I have clients and they come to me and they say, oh, I know it's a stupid question. And I really say it's not a stupid question. I mean, like, the time to ask is now. I love helping small businesses because a lot of mid-size or large law firms feel if you're not going to bring in $100,000 a year to them, they won't give you the time of day. But I don't have any policy like that. I have very small clients, mom and pop, startups all the time. Yes, exactly. And it's not like small businesses don't need the help.
Right.
So,
I love that. And just real quick question about your book. What age range is that book most geared toward?
It's for 2 to 6 year olds. And of course, I think the 2-year-olds would be read to by their parents, but that's who it's aimed at. And I was fortunate enough that my stepmom was a kindergarten teacher for 30 years. And so along the way, I shared the book with her and she gave me some advice. And one thing in particular was to have a couple of lines that were repeated throughout the book. Because kids love to hear when that is coming up. If there's a line that they know, kind of like the chorus of a song, they love to be able to chime in and they get very excited. So I did do that.
Wonderful. That's so great. Well, I can't wait to read it. And we'll post it on our Kid Swim page too, of course, as a great kid resource. It was, so much information. I'm so grateful. And it's great to see you. And,
you too. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I'll talk to you soon. I'll be in touch soon.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Bye.